Well, hello everyone. I am Wayne Dean, author, trainer, motivational speaker. Today we're going to be talking about the book that I authored, Messages from Childhood That Hold Us Back. I originally had the title, It's Mama's Fault I Can't Sell, and I found that it kind of offended some people, some mothers or whatever. But there are certain messages from childhood that do hold us back. And so I wrote a book about this. It is available on Amazon, but as a special for anybody that's here now, I'll get you a copy of the book. All you have to do is join my Facebook group, and I'll send you a free copy of the entire book. Just reach out to facebook.com /group/ question led selling. When you join my group, and either you can go right to the link there by question led selling. When you join my community, anybody who joins my community automatically will receive a free copy of the entire book. So if you want a copy of the book, just go ahead and go to my Facebook community, and then I'll know that you joined the group. And the group each week, we do live streams like this, other ones. I post things, sales tips. Members who join my group for even just an introductory $37, they get 30 pre-recorded 1 minute sales manager tapes that I send them. They get access to some other things on my YouTube channel. So for just $37, people can get some sales tips. But then I also have individual coaching starting at $97. My participation in my weekly class is $199, and you can join my weekly sales training class and also receive one-on-one coaching from me. And then I actually do additional motivational speaking group settings. So if anybody has a group that you need to have somebody come do a talk, my talks range from how to deal with difficult people, the 5 things that customers really want, how to be a happier employee, the physics of sales. So we have a lot of topics that we do 1 and 2 hour motivational talks for your group if you're interested. But today's session is free, no cost for you to join. And as we do a review on my book, Messages from Child That Hold Us Back. So we need to recognize that buyers, the people that salespeople are trying to sell to, are also human. And they act out psychological scripts reflecting the needs, desires, their bias, their defense mechanisms. The best salespeople, though, are amateur psychologists. I love what Dave Sandler, one of the gurus of sales training, wrote one time. He said, sales is a Broadway play put on by a psychiatrist. This is an act. This is a play. In my training, my step-up system is a 4-act play. But people need to understand that everything a buyer says or does is a reflection of scripts that they carry in their head, typically messages from childhood. And these scripts reflect various degrees of psychological maturity or not. Buyers, though, are prisoners to these scripts that were taught by their parents. And so what we want to talk about is some of those messages from childhood that the buyer has, but also the salesperson has. And we want to recognize a couple of different things. And first of all, what we want to recognize is first thing mama taught you, or parent taught you, or somebody taught you is, hey, don't talk to strangers. Don't take money from strangers. Don't ask so many questions. One of the first chapters in my book talks about how I was conditioned. We don't take money from friends. I grew up in a farming community. Farmers support and help each other. Every August, Russell Winkler, the neighbor farmer down the road, would come and ask my brother and I to help him bale hay. Now, I don't know if you've ever baled hay or not, but outside of laying sod, 2 of the worst jobs I've ever done. Hot, sweaty. It's August, Midwest, 90-degree humidity, 95-degree heat, straw poking you, sticking you. And so mom said, now Russell's going to come ask you boys if you want to bale hay with him. And he's probably going to offer you some money at the end. Now, remember, we don't take money from our friends. So at the end of the day, after my brother and I sweating in this heat and humidity, hay sticking to us, Russell reaches into his bib overalls, a little coin pocket right here in his bib overall, and pulls out 2 Kennedy $50. And now I'm conditioned. Remember what my mama said, we don't take money from our friends. So here's one of the issues that salespeople have. One of the things you're taught to do is build a bond and rapport, build a relationship with somebody, actually become friends with build that trusted advisor status. But now your conditioning is taught you don't take money from strangers. So now it's really difficult for you to talk about money. So again, Talking to strangers is difficult because you were told not to. Don't take money from strangers. Don't ask so many questions. You know, salespeople are afraid of no. They're afraid to hear the word no because, as you'll see on the slide here, the average toddler hears no 400 times a day. Now that seems like a lot, but usually it's like this way. No, 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 no. Don't do that. No, no, no. Don't touch that. So we hear no so often as a kid, we don't want to hear it as an adult. So one of the problems that we have is we hear these things. We hear no running when we would have had our mom say something like, please walk. No throwing, put your clothes gently on the floor, or put your shoes down on the floor. No shouting, use your quiet voice. No whining, use your talking voice. No crying. Now think about these things. No hitting, no fighting, no jumping on the sofa. What did you hear as a child? Did you hear it in the really negative way? No, 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 no. Or did you hear the instruction in a gentle, nurturing parent kind of way? So a couple of my trainings, we talk about nurturing parent, critical parent, but most of us don't want to hear no. So salespeople have been conditioned to avoid even going for the no because you don't want to hear the no. But no is going to happen. So in sales, I want you to be different than just better. What I mean by that is this, if I've got a group of salespeople in front of me, whether I'm talking to a group of 20 or I'm talking to 200, I'll pick somebody out of the audience and I'll say, tell me why a prospect or somebody should buy from you today. Tell me about your company. And they'll lead with, oh, we're the latest, greatest, most improved. We've been in business for 50 years. And they start telling me how great they are. We call it benefits and feature. They tell me about their benefits and features and hope to convince me that I should hire them. So I'll say to that salesperson, so today you're telling me I should hire you because you're better than the competition. Oh, yeah. Okay. Here's the problem. I've talked to your sales manager in the hallway, and he said that they're probably going to terminate you at the end of the day. But don't worry. I don't mean to scare you. Because I can get you a job with your biggest competitor on Monday. You can start on Monday. Now, on Monday, who's better? The company you're representing today or the company you're going to represent on Monday? See, this is what clients know. If you tell anybody why you're better than anybody else, they'll think, oh, you're only telling me that because you work for that company. If you work for the other company, you tell me they're better. So you need to talk about why you're different instead of why you're better. Why you're different, what it is that it differentiates you from the client, from the other people. So when we talk about sizing up the situation, I do what's called the step-up system of selling. When I talk about my program, I talk about size up the situation. Who is this person? How do they process information? How do I figure out how this person communicates so that I can communicate them in the best way that I can? So that's the sizing up the situation. So one of the messages we had in our head was go make friends. So we're thinking as a salesperson, hey, mama taught me go make friends. But the prospect was, hey, don't trust strangers. So we're at conflict right here. Never speak about yourself. It's bragging. Okay, so I don't want to brag about my product or service, but now the prospect's saying, yeah, well, let's get to the point. Mind your manners, be polite. But the prospect's thinking, be quiet. It's best if you keep silent. So they're not talking. You're being polite. They're not talking. We're not getting any communication going here to find out what the real challenge or issue is. Be humble and modest. Now that's nice, but what do you think the prospect's thinking? They're thinking, oh, you with your big ideas, who do you think you are? Right? So these messages from childhood are screwing both of us up sometimes, the prospect and the salesperson. All right. Now, next step in my system, we talk about sizing up the situation is manage their expectation. What does the client expect out of this meeting that we're having? All right. So you were taught, get to the point. But the prospect was taught, don't sign anything. Don't commit to anything. You were taught, don't challenge people. All right. They were taught, get to the point. People like us don't do that. All right. But they're thinking, be quiet. Best if I keep silent, be polite, let someone else talk. You see how we have these conflicting messages from what's going on between the salesperson's conditioning as a child and as a prospect, what we were conditioned to do. And so that's why it's really so important for you to build Trusted advisor status. Trusted advisor status. I want you to think about it this way, those of you salespeople. Let me motivate you this way. Think about if you were not selling your product or service. You were just an independent consultant. The client hired you to advise them on what they needed, where they might go for, what would be the price, those kind of things. That's what you want to think about. You want to go in as a trusted advisor, not a salesperson. And one of the best ways to get that right away is to tell the person that. Is to say to them, hey, I want to come here today and build trust advisor status. And I understand I can't do that just by saying, trust me. I hate when that salespeople trust me. They have no reason to trust you. Why should they trust you? But if you say, I'm going to ask you questions because I'm going to come at this as a trusted advisor status. I'm not going to come at this as a salesman that already has a preconceived notion of what it is that I want to sell you. I'm going to start asking you some questions. I hope that's okay, so that we can discover together what might be a solution to any of the problems or issues you might have. All right. Messages from childs in the decision step. Did I go past the pain step? In the pain step. You were taught don't hurt others. Don't ask so many questions. Who asked you? Why can't you be like your brother or sister? Well, that's a bad one for some people, right? But messages in the prospect's head is don't show weakness. I ask you a question. Hey, answer me. I'll have people do this in a group setting. I'll say, everybody close your eyes. Think back to you're about 4 or 5 years of age. You're on the living room floor of your family room. You're watching your favorite cartoon. And all of a sudden you hear, hey, I asked you a question. Answer me. You have been conditioned to answer questions. So when a prospect says something like, hey, I asked you a question, how much is this going to cost me? You're conditioned to answer it when maybe you don't have enough information yet to answer that question. I want you to think about something though. They had mamas too, the prospect did. They can be conditioned to answer your question if you do it nurturing level. So when a prospect, hey, ask your question, what's this going to cost me? I appreciate that. That's a great question. Probably more than you were thinking. Why? What were you thinking was going to cost to address these issues? See, you can be nurturing, reverse the question, and get information from the client. Understanding that messages that the prospect had, they've been taught that if I ask you a question, you're going to answer it. But again, if you do it in a very nurturing way, you can reverse and get more information from the client without being evasive or standoffish. So that's just one of the tips that we talk about. And by the way, when I use the word pain, people are motivated to action by the intensity of their pain. Everything we do in life is for 2 reasons, either to gain pleasure or to avoid pain. But you will do more to avoid pain than you will to gain pleasure. So the client will be motivated to buy your product or service if they have a problem. If you don't like the word pain, just substitute reasons to do business. If they've got a problem and you are so good at asking questions that you find a pain that the competition didn't find, you've got a greater chance of making a sale. I want you to think about it. Under my sales training program that I do, the 3-step system, 3D training, you'll make more sales, not because you have a better product or service than the competition, although I hope you do. You'll make more sales because you do a better job of asking questions. All right. Now, you were taught don't ask so many questions. Speak only when spoken to. You need to break through that conditioning, and you do it by what I call the 3-step approach. Stroke, repeat, reverse for clarity. Stroke, that's a great question. Do you mind if I ask you one? Suppose I said, would that be fair? If you end a lot of your questions is, suppose I was able to do this for you, would that make sense? Would that be fair? Because your mama said, let's do things that are sensible. And mama also said, let's play fair. So you can use that. Hey, suppose I could do this or this. Would that be fair? And now you're getting the client to answer your question instead of you just going out. In the decision step, one of the things we think is it's impolite to ask for something like, hey, can you make a decision? So one of the things that I teach people is, hey, instead of saying to somebody, so are you the decision maker? What a lot of people will say, well, yeah, subliminally, they'll say, yes, I can make a decision. I can tell you no, but I can't tell you yes. We call those people Seymours. Seymours need to see more before they take it to veto the very important top officer. So instead of saying, are you the decision maker and getting, well, yeah, I can tell you no, say, hey, what's the process you're going to go through when it comes to making a decision? Okay. And it's not impolite to ask that question, and say to the person, um, who else is going to be influenced by it? I understand that you have the ability to make the decision, but who else is influenced by the decision that you make, right? You get to ask those questions where you were conditioned. Don't ask so many questions. One of the things that happens with salespeople in the decision step is they don't ask enough questions. They don't think of themselves as a newspaper reporter at this step. And what I mean by a newspaper reporter is who, what, where, when, why, how. You should, who makes the decision, when you need to make the decision, why you would make the decision, how will you go about making the decision, at what level in the company is the decision made. You have a right to ask these questions. Because if you think about it this way, if you say to the prospect, hey, Mr. Prospect, if I fully understand your decision-making process and what's going to go into making that decision, I fully understand what the problem is, what the scope of the problem is, and I fully understand your budgetary restrictions. Doesn't it make sense that I can do such a better job at the fulfillment step, at the presentation stage? So that's why I'm asking you these things. And you have a right to find out if this person even qualifies to be your client. All right. Do they have a problem that you can fix? Will they invest the time and money and effort to fix the problem? And can they make a decision to spend the money to fix the problem because they like you? You need to understand that there is a systematic approach to an end result. And it's just not showing up and winging it. And it's not those messages from childhood that hold you back. Don't talk to strangers, don't take money from strangers, don't do all these other things that you are supposed to do. Make sure you think about what's holding you back from that old head trash and conditioning that you have. Now, remember, in the presentation step, remember kindergarten, first grade, maybe, where we did show and tell? And obviously what that was a methodology of teaching us originally. If you think about what show and tell was, it was your first introduction to being a salesperson. But most salespeople take that conditioning and they think that's what their sales process should be. Show up and throw up. Some of you have heard that. Show and tell. Share my products with them. And finish your meal. I got to show them everything. I've got to do everything all at once. And I got to pitch, pitch, pitch. That conditioning from childhood gets salespeople into this regimented thing about, I'm going to jump right into benefits and features. I'm going to show you my product and I'm going to convince you that my product can do everything for you. Now think about the messages the prospect's thinking about. Don't share everything. They don't tell you all the problems. Because if I tell you how bad my problem is and how much I'm willing to spend, oh my God, you might try and sell me something. All right. They don't believe everything that you tell them. Remember this line, prospects believe only half of what a salesman tells them, but 100% of what they say. So be careful about showing and telling your conditioning. Get back into asking questions so that the client says it. If I was able to do this, this, and this, that would help you. How is so much better than saying, you want to save money, don't you? Prospects were thought, don't commit to anything and do the TIO. And if you don't remember what that is, everybody, I'd like to think it over. And that's what really is going on here. It is a buyer dance, what's going on. You pitch, they give you stalls and objections. You try and overcome stalls and objections. They try and put off a decision because you haven't built that trusted advisor status with them. Because again, they're remembering, don't talk strangers, don't trust everything somebody says. You need to break through that conditioning by being different. Go back to slide number 3. You need to be different, not better than every other salesperson. And then in the last step, we start talking about messages from childhood that we have as a salesperson. Finish and go home. Don't ask, wait for the other person to offer. It's never over. That kind of thing. It's impolite to ask for money. They were taught give others a turn. So they're waiting for you to close them. All right. But they're watching out for tricks. And there's a start and finish to everything, though. Trust but verify is what they're thinking about. So people ask me all the time, hey, Wayne, what's the magic dust? What's the magic you have to close somebody? Is there a magic phrase? If I really had one that I could give, why would I give it away free here? But I will tell you, one of the things, a technique anyway, it doesn't work all the time. But instead of saying to the prospect, hey, I've shown you how my product or service can solve your problem at a price we talked about you can afford. So what do you want to do next? Never say to the client, what do you want to do next? It gives them the chance to, I'd like to think it over. Always say, once you've solved the problem price they can afford, you should be saying, what would you like me to do next? And they go, well, I don't know. Do I need to sign a contract? Do I need to put 10% down? and then you reverse them with it. Well, that makes sense. Would that be an issue? Right. And then ask them a question. That that is my magic dust, quite frankly, in closing, is what would you like me to do next? And the client will usually say, well, what's the next step? Do I have to give you a down payment? Do I have to sign a contract? Do I need to do a purchase order? And you say, what are you familiar with? Okay. Now, that's part of a training that I do on my book. Again, I want to go back to, if you would like a copy of the book, it goes into a lot of stories about childhood pains, childhood things that hold us back. Don't talk to strangers, stop being pushy, don't show off, you failed. I mean, in sales, we're going to fail. We're probably going to fail more often. But the analogy I use this, I'm going to close with this. One time I was at a dinner doing a speaking engagement. It was years ago. And on this side of the podium was with the March of Dimes, by the way, and it was that Dr. Jonas Salk. He had cured polio with Dr. Sabin in the 50s. Dr. Jonas Salk, one of the greatest minds of the 20th century. I mean, he was fantastic as far as coming up with a cure for polio with Dr. Sabin. Sabin came up with the live oral vaccine that we were able to immunize so much of the country with. But Dr. Jonas Salk over on this side of me. On this side of me, Ted Williams, the famous baseball player. And at the break, everybody was coming up to Ted Williams. And here is Jonas Salk sitting over here on this side of the podium. And I'm thinking, okay, this guy cured polio. This guy batted 406 in 1941, the last batter ever to bat over 400. Yet he failed 60% of the time. Now, where else can you make millions of dollars and fail 60% of the time other than meteorology? Where else can you fail 60% of the time and still be good? In sales, salespeople accept a 20, a 30% closing ratio. What if you could take it up to 70%, right? The only reason you shouldn't buy or shouldn't sell somebody if you follow a systematic approach is because the client lied. And if the client lied to you, it's because the client didn't trust you. If you follow a systematic approach, you can improve your closing ratio by another 30 to 40%. And that's what we're finding for most of our clients. So again, join my Facebook group at Question Led Selling. It's free. You'll get weekly sales tips. You'll get a copy of my book. And then if you want to go any further for additional sales training, be a part of my weekly classes, my live streams, we'd be happy to do that for you. I didn't have time, and it was kind of with all the number of people that are watching right now, I don't have time to address questions. You're certainly welcome to send me any questions that you have, any comments. You can email me simply at wayne@3dsalestraining.com, wayne@3dsalestraining.com. Be glad to have a conversation with you. But for now, sell in 3D.